I'll try. Hi, my name's Danielle, and my topic today is coffee. So according to the National Coffee Association, 54% of Americans over the age of 18 consume coffee with an average of 3.1 cups per day. Coffee consumption has become increasingly popular over the past century, and the popularity is expected to continue rising. The USDA states that production is expected to increase by 2.4 million bags to a whopping total of 21 billion pounds of coffee produced in the next year. So I have a few questions for you. So how many of you have heard about how coffee affects your health or seen articles? And how many of you have seen or heard articles about how coffee is affecting the environment? No, nobody. So today, my proposition is that the growing demand of coffee is progressively damaging the environment. I'm going to discuss this in two ways. First, it has a significant impact on deforestation, and second, it has a significant impact on water pollution. So the first point I'd like to make is that the coffee demand has induced a shift in farming techniques that has led to deforestation. According to the Rainforest Alliance, decades ago, coffee farms depended on the shade from wild forests, which supported wildlife, migratory birds, and it also provided a better bean quality. As global demands grew, a new hybrid plant was developed that would yield more product, but in turn this required the use of agrochemicals and full exposure to sunlight. We call the old coffee, the traditional plant, shade-grown coffee today, and the new hybrid is called sun coffee. So this new sun coffee led to many farmers around the world to cut down their forests and abandon their traditional ways. And this high-tech approach of farming has devastated forests throughout the tropics. According to the Oxford Journal, the most recent data shows that 41% of coffee farms are managed without any shade. 35% are with sparse shade, and only 23% are grown under the canopy. 20 years ago, this number was 43%. According to the World Resource Institute, 30% of all global forest cover has been cleared, 20% has been degraded, and the rest is fragmented, leaving only 15% of the global forest intact. The World Wildlife Fund states that of the 50 countries in the world with the highest deforestation rates, 37 were coffee producers. National Geographic highlights that deforestation results in habitat loss for millions, leading to several to become extinct. It contributes to global warming as there are less trees to absorb greenhouse gases. And last, the land degradation, it leads to land degradation such as erosion and soil infertility. The rainforest can completely vanish within the next 100 years at the current rate of 32 million acres per year is cut down. My second supporting argumentation is that the processing practices and chemicals used on farms are leading to major water pollution. According to a study found in the Journal of Environmental Monitoring and Assessment, coffee is produced by a method called wet processing, and it's done by feeding the coffee berries into a pulper to separate the berries from flesh. This uses copious amounts of water. The remaining flesh and wastewater, which are high in nitrogen and other chemicals from farming, then has to be discarded. The most common method of discarding this nitrogenous byproducts is to dump them around the processing plants or into nearby water sources. Take into account, we're processing 21 billion pounds of coffee, and that 21 billion pounds is only 20% of the weight of a total berry. So in total, that's about 80 billion pounds of waste. So that's being dumped into water sources, which is causing pollution. The Institute of Nutrition of Central America in Panama states that the pulp is high in carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus, and is being introduced in exuberant amounts into the rivers, streams, and oceans. The pulp is known to clog up water sources while also decreasing the pH. The previous mentioned study about processing says that during the peak processing, the nearby water source dropped from 7.0 to 6.2 pH, making it significantly more acidic, and marine life is unable to survive in acidic environments. Another way in which coffee demand leads to water pollution is the use of agrochemicals. They're high in nitrogen, and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association states that the coffee production uses heavy nitrogenous fertilizers that leach into water sources. So the nitrogen and phosphorus in the water leads to massive algal blooms, and these algal blooms use up all the oxygen in the water, leaving no available oxygen for marine life, thus making that aquatic environment unable to sustain life. So ultimately, the pulp and chemical fertilizers lead to death or inability to thrive for marine life. But it also has to be considered that there's millions of people relying on these water sources as well, and land animals as well. So they're being harmed alongside marine life. And to conclude, the growing demand of coffee is harming the environment in many ways, especially through 1, deforestation, and 2, water pollution. Thank you.
All right, well, the importance of the topic is indicated at the beginning by the consumption patterns that we have and the amount that's being produced. I thought you had some a good, clear preview of the 2 main points that you have in your presentation, so that's fine. You signpost them well when you're in the body of the speech. There's a lot of explanation on the first point that's necessary, but you did a pretty good job of that. The notion that there's an increasing percentage of the growing that's being done in the sun as opposed to the shade was, I thought, pretty well documented, although the 20% increase over 30 years doesn't jump out at me as being nearly as significant as you're suggesting. Not that it's insignificant, but maybe, for example, if you could translate that into the number of acres that we're talking about, that would be a good way to make that point a little stronger. I did like the fact that you tied it very closely to some other clear-cutting issues. You talked about the risk to the rainforest. I thought that that was reasonable. You're very consistent about citing sources. You've got a variety of sources that you're using to support your particular point. That was fine. The transition to the water issues was okay. The quantification of how much water waste there is and the dumping is, you do quantify the water waste. It's the harms that I think are not particularly quantified. You've got an example here or there. You've got one piece of statistical information in this one particular case where the acidity level increased, but you didn't say it increased to the level beyond which the marine life is capable of handling. You just made the general inference that as acidity goes up, it's bad for marine life. But is there like a threshold point? I'm not sure on that, and have in the example that you have, did it cross that threshold point? The last part of that second argument about the humans or animals that are dependent on those water resources, that was a little bit thinly developed, but everything else I thought you had very good information on. It's pretty solid data to support your generalizations, and your presentation is pretty effective also. All right, thank you.